Step right up, folks! Your dream come true! Give a wedgie just 25 cents!
Wedgie?
The Wedgie Club. 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 The Wedgie Club.
So there was a story in 1997. It was a regular day like no other day. Suddenly, this terror comes into town. Now chasing around anybody it can get his hands on. There's like children running around, teachers, just everybody's just in a commotion. And while this is all happening, a brave and brashing young crossing guard was trying to save the day, put up a couple things to make sure, people were safe. As he was trying to save the day, the terror quickly reminded him just of who he was, and more importantly, who was he against society? With just one statement: you better look under there.
Before you run off, pal, you better check under there. Underwear! Exactly! A mega wedgie! What a crack up!
Casper, A Spirited Beginning, 1997, was a classic film. But what also made this very classic, especially when you're talking about the wedgie community, was the iconic scene of the crossing guard getting that famous mega atomic wedgie. Before everyday dorks started getting terrorized with the cursed wedgie attacks, underwear itself, since the beginning of time, has always dictated the fate of the individual in regards to society. From the stretch of his tidy whities, his reaction when he finally got it, the impact of it that made today's dorks want to emulate that by giving themselves their own mega atomic wedgies with 6XL, tidy whities, and briefs, and all these other brands. Welcome to the Wedgie Club channel. I am your lovely wedgie for host Joctavius, in a 6-part series known as the Evolution of Wedgies. There's a reason why I am currently sitting behind my nice dresser. One, because my room is currently looking like a Frank Ocean video, but also because I feel like when we talk about wedgies, we always talk about, oh, we've seen it on television, or we've gotten it, or we've seen it other people experience from it, but we never seem to give a lot of props to the very drawer that was the biggest gateway to the culture itself. But yet in today's social media landscape, the same questions keep going through, which is, why are tidy whities so unpopular, and why do people that wear tidy whities deserve to have wedgies, and so on and so forth. But nobody's really talking about, where did this all start? Like, how did this all get started to the point of where we are today, where we look at tidy whities and other forms of underwear as unpopular? From pop culture and media to personal friend circles and neighborhoods, underwear has been used as a means to define a wedgie boy or wedgie girl's personality, social class, their attractive level, and so many other factors. However, this then begs the question, what makes one pair more attractive than the other? Which one makes it more dorkier than the other? And more importantly, what even makes a pair of underwear so wedgieable? But before we get started, go put on your favorite pair, get you a good snack, let us know in the comments what you're wearing, and please enjoy this video as we have enjoyed making it for you. The conversations within society on whether a tidy whitey wearing dork is really a basement dwelling incel has been a conversation that has been happening since the beginning of time. Now, if you watched my first video on the history of wedgies, which if you haven't, I definitely recommend that you should. Got a lot of good gems in there. Most likely you remember that the first pieces of underwear ended up becoming what is now the first wedgie. Which also just makes me realize, as we're talking about this, that men have been wearing thongs since the beginning of time, but now we're acting like this is a new thing. Now, the fundoshi originally was made from linen. Now today it's changed to cotton. However, according to Bayer, women have also been wearing G-strings and thongs as well, in a different form, of course, as a loincloth. So as we can see again, wedgies have been happening literally since the beginning of underwear in time. But why was it that way? Why were we originally wearing loincloths versus wearing what we wear today, or even during the times of like the colonial era? According to Cole, the purpose of men and women's underwear serves as a multitude of purposes, from cleanliness, modesty, and morality. It supports the shape of the outer clothes, like for example wearing boxers under jeans, don't recommend it, social status, and of course appeal of the opposite gender. So basically, even back then, underwear has always been used as a way to define where somebody from, what family do you come from, how much money do you have in your pocket, is this a brokey, Wow, they were thinking of Brokies even back then. And I'm not joking about that, because how people knew where you were from is they will look at what you were wearing. Because most people, if you could afford nice things, of course you would have, you know, the YSL toga and, you know, the Tommy Hilfiger loincloth with the Birkenstock sandals, right? But to the average poor person that was a serf back in like BC or even AD, couldn't afford that. Most of them barely could afford clothes, so the loincloth was all they had. People who were in debt, gladiators, and other poor people who couldn't afford clothes, that's all they wore. It wasn't uncommon that you would see people walking around with just their loincloth on for the day, especially if it was like a hot day and people had to work and do like manual labor. What a person ended up wearing within society has always deemed them as a certain type of preconceived notion that may or may not even be real. And this will continue to be a discussion, especially among men, in modern day conversations of boxers and brief stereotypes that will eventually lead to what we now know to be our favorite schoolyard prank.
Are you wearing boxers? Briefs.
Before tidy whities became the laughingstock of many teen and comedy films, at one point it was considered the man's underwear, and no, I'm not saying that just because I wear them also. Prior to the creation of tidy whities, most men either wore those very long union suits that were terrible if you had to go to the bathroom or do something quickly, or even boxer shorts, which may or may not give you the support that you may have needed or desired. Mind you, most of these were sparsely different when we're talking about the loincloth from yesteryear. This then brings us to the conversation on what makes a man choose a certain type of underwear. The answer to that is that they don't. According to Cole, most men usually got their underwear from either their wives or their mothers. And for most men during the 20th century, they could care less what they were wearing as long as their clothes were ironed. According to Cole, most men usually wore underwear for functional purposes, aka the ability to go work, the ability to go handle business so that they can keep a wife and keep a roof under their head. They could care less about what their fashion sense was and does this underwear make me feel a certain way. Anyways, during my research of looking through like tidy whities from yesteryear, I've noticed something that I think that a lot of people tend to not pick up on. But back then I noticed a lot of brands had that more baggier tidy whities look. According to Cole, the purpose of baggy clothing, whether it's outer clothes or inner clothes, is to hide certain things of the body. And that baggy look helps to sell tidy whities into the market that is known today. They were different from boxer shorts. They were way more comfortable. They had more room for you to be able to have support. It kept your Amazon packages down there supported. It wasn't jingling and jangling like in boxer shorts. Tidy whities were the Michael Jackson, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles. They were the top guy when it came to underwear in the 20th century. Seen as the man's underwear, it was masculine. You had military ass of guys that just came back from World War II wearing tidy whities. Like, why would you not wear them? It started to speak not just to like, oh, this is just another pair of underwear that you can wear. Now it's a form of showing patriotism to America. Like, this is gonna be a crazy statement to say, but I think tidy whities are embedded into the fabric of patriarchy, but that's another conversation for another day. As many netizens or redditors will tell you, most people were wearing tidy whities in the world. Tidy whities did not have the characterization of being a nerd of what we will know today. Now, while the nerd term did not exist how it exists, how we use it today, the societal views on men and what they're supposed to be doing and what they should care about was still at an all-time high at this point. A piece of this is, again, patriarchy and most men not wanting to be the other person out or to be considered gay. And if you think I'm exaggerating the gay part, there was at one point that if you were considered homosexual, you were put into the mental health hospital, probably getting shot. There wasn't a lot of studies that validated human interaction, so it would seem kind of similar to like fetishes as a mental illness. The ability to own a pair of tidy whities also spoke to your social class as well. Families could afford to pay for tidy whities and they probably had maybe nicer clothes, maybe lived in the suburbs. Not to say that people in the city or in more rural areas weren't able to afford these types of things. We gotta keep in mind that when tidy whities first came out, it was in the middle of the Great Depression. Even after the post-war era, lack of access to many different stores if you were not a white person in America. The takeaway I want you to take with this conversation is that because the majority of the world, especially in America, were wearing tidy whities, this now asserted that tidy whities were the new masculine underwear to wear. Now, as we progress through time and the economy is starting to boom more, we're having more civil rights legislation that's allowing more people to be able to be in more areas. It seems like the new fad of tidy whities and briefs are about to take the world by storm. But then something would happen that would change the trajectory of underwear forever. In 1977, Saturday Night Fever premiered in many different movie screens across America. A young John Travolta played the character Tony Manero, who would frequent many clubs around the city of New York, run around and scream that he's Al Pacino, and dance the 70s away. There was something more iconic about this movie that a lot of people didn't think about. When John Travolta did the scene where he woke up in his house with nothing on but a pair of skimpy black briefs, walking around calling himself Al Pacino, putting his grandmother in an early grave, this signified a few things. It made many audiences go wild for different reasons. On one hand, it jump-started many gay boys' fantasies like Ricky Martin. It was also the first time in cinema history that a man has ever graced the screen with nothing on but just a pair of underwear in a more seductive manner. This also seems to reflect the times of men where things like their undergarments were very intimate and also for a functional purpose was now taking on more of a fashionable trend. It also reflected the times as by this point in the 1970s, there were so many different male brands that were not just on tight whities, but they were also selling thongs, jock straps, even lingerie. So this signified that men were starting to become more self-aware of what they were wearing and now deciding what they choose to wear versus what the world or their wives or mothers were giving to them. According to Gold magazine article, The Times recorded men reporting about them choosing underwear with other colors than white briefs that their wives and mothers bought. What this movie also signified though was the complete end of men's underwear solely being focused on what he chooses to wear for work purposes or whatever that he has to do. No longer was it about nothing's coming between me and my Calvins. No, the whole world wants to know, are you wearing those Calvins? While briefs and tidy whities did not lose their steam anytime soon as we go into the 1980s, what did change the societal attitudes towards underwear? Well, now with the use of more media and the change of societal attitudes, many people started to see underwear as a selling point to make fun of and make jokes, and this would lead to, of course, what we now know as the cursed wedgie. By the 1980s, many movies like Back to the Future and Risky Business helped to usher in a new version of America where briefs were starting to lose its mainstream appeal. Compared to other movies where women were seen as seductive, even with wearing the most granniest of panties, men were not given that same luxury. To put it plainly, men were used as a laughingstock with parts of their clothing that they never signed up to be part of the joke. As we see future television stars like Bryan Cranston will later say in the late 2000s, him and the producers of the show Breaking Bad, which is one of my favorite shows, chose to wear tidy whities because it was quote unquote funny.
I took him aside. I said, how do you feel about the underpants? He said, you know what? What's the most embarrassing thing I could be dressed in? I said, tidy whitey underpants. He says, that's what I'm gonna wear because that's what's right for the character.
So again, this tells us that the conversation on men's underwear has went from it being just something intimate and private to now it's becoming a commodity and something to make jokes of. And as we see in today's time, new eras come with new wedgies. Because up to this point, granted, there were probably some wedgies that were given. As you know, in my history video, I detailed that some wedgies probably have happened. The focus in the 1980s was not just about what you wore, but it defined who you were. No longer were the wedgies that you were getting were natural or accidental. Now they were on purpose by your very own bullies and friends in the neighborhood. If underwear can make you attractive to women like John Travolta, then they could also do the complete opposite and make you undesirable. And what better way to showcase this than with wedgies? Now granted, 1980s flicks were not like the ones in the 90s where the focus was actually on the act of the wedgie. In both Just One of the Guys and Weird Science, the wedgie was really not as devastating as the wedgies that would come in the 90s. The underwear wasn't shown, and even in one of them, it was more of a pants wedgie than it was the wedgie themselves. What these movies tell us is that the focus should not be on the wedgie themselves, but what impact does that wedgie give to both the person and society that's watching it. When Shaq gives wide the menacing wedgie in Weird Science, you could not really see the wedgie itself, but you saw the reaction that Wyatt had to the wedgie. His face immediately grimaced in pain, humiliation, and even regret as to what did he even do to get to this point. The girls around him caught the secondhand wedgie aftermath, almost as if they felt the wedgie too. And this could add to the many feelings that a dork may feel when they're getting a tidy whitey stretch, especially if it's by different materials. And this all adds to the humiliation of the dork, kind of like getting put in the stocks and having tomatoes thrown at you by the crowd. The pain of the wedgie already hurts, but the fact that you have now the crowd watching you and they get to have their own jeering comments, it just all adds to the humiliation aspect of it. And depending on the material of underwear that you wore, this even made the situation worse. After the 1985 laundromat commercial with the boxer shorts, public opinion on tidy whities and what is really considered manly underwear has now changed as we get more into the later 80s. If you were wearing modal, elastane, spandex, your underwear would stretch and people would be like laughing at, oh my God, how is this underwear stretching so far? If you're wearing cotton like tidy whities, then bullies could probably rip your underwear, which would make it even more embarrassing, showing the world that your underwear that got ripped, and God forbid that you had some stains on it. If you were wearing things like nylon, a tear may drop out of your eye because nylon is very hard to rip, hence why certain underwear is terrible to like do ripping wedgies with. Now I will say that this form of treatment was specific to what area that you were in the world or location. There would be certain parts of America where briefs were still the thing, and many people in your neighborhood, high school and family all still wore briefs. If you went to like more urban areas like New York City, Chicago, LA, you would see a multitude of different fashion senses, especially the form of boxer shorts and then eventual boxer briefs. But regardless of what you were wearing, wedgies were painful as heck. Now a lot of people thought in the 80s that tighty whities were the only underwear that was used for like making funny wedgie content and making funny nerd content. Take the WWF, which will now be known as today's WWE. Spectators will watch while the wrestlers will fight each other with the most colorful wrestlers' trunks, aka briefs. Wedgies would then be given to expose the man cheeks, which would then make the whole wrestling room go crazy in laughter and jokes, which ended up becoming a staple to many matches till this day. And this wasn't just for men either. When women got wedgied in their colorful panties, and even in some cases a thong, this spoke a lot of different connotations. On one hand, it's continuing this trend that underwear is funny, it's something to be laughed at, it's something to be used as a joke and a prank on people, as well as a means to show your domination over an opponent. But what this also now speaks to is that even for women now, the influence of wedgies have now started to triumph the social attitudes on underwear. A thong used to be something that used to be seen as like very sensual for a woman to wear. When you see her getting wedgied in, you can't help but laugh and wonder how long she could take it before it ripped. These events will confirm that even sexy underwear will not save you from being a wedgie nerd. Now, while women were still not the biggest focus on being wedgie objects to the world, men definitely started to consider their own wedgie mortality and started to make what we call the great change. Defined by when most boys realize that they are now starting to become men or older, which means that you have to go from wearing what you used to wear, whether it's cartoon briefs, tidy whities or briefs, whatever, until now you're now a man, or you're now starting to become a man and you have to start switching more to boxer shorts. But for most boys growing up during this era, this was traumatizing because some didn't even want to switch. Some families didn't even make them switch, but they felt they needed to switch because they saw that the times were changing and they didn't want to become a target. The 1980s was Reagan's America, where nerds were the official whipping boys of America, the AIDS crisis was the black sheep of the family, and most men did not want to be associated with neither of those. This didn't just affect just straight men, it's also gay men started to wear more boxer shorts, and they definitely were not trying to get wedgie. Like, can you imagine being a grown man in your 20s and 30s and then you're just getting wedgie by other guys literally because of the underwear that you wear? I know for some of y'all that's probably a dream. We will continue to see the impacts of this era affect the times of today as we continue down this decade. Now, we may understand how the media might have jump-started this whole phenomenon, but how would this affect the next generation coming in? These attitudes to this present day has continued to permeate male masculinity, as well as male choices in how they choose to do fashion, and of course their underwear. The 90s underwear politics can definitely be defined by just one question.
Mr. President, the world's dying to know, is it boxers or briefs?
In 1994, President Bill Clinton went on MTV to talk with his voters, and one question in the audience was, do you wear boxers or briefs? The president did say he wears a little bit of both, but prefers to wear briefs.
Usually briefs. I can't believe she did that.
Given that this was the president of the United States, I'm sure that some men did feel reaffirmed within their own masculinity that, hey, if the president of the United States is still wearing briefs, then so can I. And by some of the cheers of the women in the audience, it can be a further. They probably got down with what he was wearing. While we still did get a lot of wedgies from WWF from both men and women, in regards to TV shows and films, there weren't a lot of female wedgies being done. The nerd trope within the 1990s continued to still be a trend in shows like Seinfeld, which pushes that no matter how old you get, you can still get wedgies. Other shows like The Mask highlighted that wedgies were for everybody. It didn't matter if you were a big jock, if you were the mayor of the city, or if you were like a farmer or a nerd. Everybody got wedgie under the mask. Take 1991 comedy flick Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Their plan to get away from the Grim Reaper was not to beat him up, was not to call the cops, but to give that man a gnarly wedgie. This era will also give us future technique. These schoolyard pranks were no longer just kept in the schoolyard. Like, grown men are now getting wedgies. It's not just guys in high school and guys that are around other guys. Now we're talking about men that are well into their corporate life. In real life, college universities like Rutgers, students will form the wedgie patrol to walk around and find out who was wearing briefs and completely rip them off of them. Which now focuses not on just the domination of men with their underwear, but now the devastation that comes with it. Take fraternities like Kappa Alpha, where brothers would literally come in underwear that they know that would either rip easily or underwear that they did not care about because they knew that wedgies were coming regardless. And if you wore briefs and they thought that you were gay, God bless you. You had kid movies like Safety Patrol and Treehouse Hostage that reassert that only boys should be wearing tidy whities and briefs, not grown men. As we've seen what happened to grown men that are still wearing tidy whities per Casper, they put the school crossing guard in the same underwear that they hung the kids up with. His was more devastating and more impactful. When you see wedgies being given to like grown men that's usually reserved for like schoolyards, that's when it becomes like a whole new thing. Like these influences, I am sure, are part of the reason why most people in the community wear more bigger underwear so that they can achieve that style of wedgie. By the 2000s, boxer briefs have finally hit the market and taken it by storm, similar to how the tidy whities have done it. And while tidy whities began to fall out of popularity, that did not mean the wedgies stopped. The new stretched world, the wedgies were sparse. The end was near as we knew it. Unless you happen to be those people that wear tidy whities. The 21st century was an unprecedented time both for the wedgie community, wedgie media, and real life. This is the first time in history that we were able to see on a globalized scale how much wedgies have overtaken the whole world. From daytime television, to movies, to books, to music, wedgies were all around us. For most of books like Captain Underpants, most of them continue the cartoon humor of tidy whities being a joke as they use tidy whities to show most of the wedgies, if not briefs. Shout out to Captain Underpants though, because they did, however, include women getting wedgie in their panties. Speaking of that, in this era, we are seeing more wedgies with women now than ever, whether it's on social media, which was then YouTube and MySpace, or we saw this in actual television like the Amanda Bond Show. Shows like Captain Flamingo and Robot Boy, making the complete wedgie culture become inclusive, and adult comedy is Always Sunny in Philadelphia, when the dorks got their boxers shredded up their butts by their old bullies. They eventually got back the female one that I cannot remember her name. I just remember them dangling her in the air by her thong. All I'm gonna say is 2011 was a great year. While it was still not a lot of like girl wedgie media outside of like WWE and other places, surprisingly on the internet, a lot of girl wedgies were happening based on the picture. And this is where you got to see those crazy stretchy thong wedgies and the granny panties wedgie that almost went atomic. It seems like girls were starting to become more a part of the conversation when it came to like wedgies and underwear. However, nothing could ever dethrone the power of the tidy whitey. There was still a surplus of men getting more wedgie than whatever underwear that they were wearing. And this was just, of course, that wedgies in general have always been a male-dominated space. There was this one wedgie though that I don't remember that girl name, but I think she had an afro and she was at like some summer camp or fat camp or something. And she got like this crazy ripping panty wedgie that I'm gonna keep it to myself. The point is that the more wedgie media that we are starting to see, the more for underwear being used as entertainment for the public has increased. As I've stated in my history video, there was like wedgies on almost every network dang there. And I think that especially during this era, we did get to see a multitude of different underwear except for tidy whities. However, the biggest content that was getting pushed, tidy whities or briefs. In fact, till this day, tidy whities still dominates most of like wedgie cartoons and television shows. Family Guy when Peter got a wedgie from Lois and his tidy whities. SpongeBob when he got a wedgie. Patrick, Codename Kids Next Door, and number 4 Going Out Sad. To prove what I'm saying in regards to how underwear has an effect on wedgies into your manhood, number 4, as we all remember, was like the coolest outside of number 5. We all know number 5 was the coolest. But when that jock of the team got caught wearing tidy whities, not gonna lie, you lost some cool points with 6-year-old me. That was just me. Even on shows like The Regular Show and films like New Guy, the bully or the big, husky, strong guy that's getting wedgied in tidy whities it's probably the most emasculating thing that you can do to take a bully status from somebody. We did however get shows like Court in the Gym and Skins that reflected the current times that men were starting to wear more boxers. However, the overwhelming amount of content of briefs and tidy whities that were shown throughout the decade have lived to set a trend until this very day. You look at the community, what do most of the wedgies consist of? It's usually either granny panties or it's tidy whities or briefs. When artwork is being done by many of our artists on DeviantArt, what do they usually use? That is how much tidy whities have dominated both our minds and conversations. However, even with the world changing to fit the norm wearing boxer briefs, still we reside with our tidy whities in pride. Because of the advancement of cell phones, media, internet, and even underwear technology, we have practically seen every wedgie that is known to man in every single underwear. Because of both the community and the pre-community, which is the people who have made content and are not a part of the community, I was able to see boxers go atomic in real time. I have seen size small or size medium briefs go up to the size of a 5'9" average male. Social media platforms like MySpace and Vimeo, for those that remember it, as well as Flickr, were home to some of the most watched and remembered content of the 2000s. However, none of these social media platforms had an impact the way YouTube had an impact. YouTube didn't just give us allowance to be able to see what everybody was wearing and how they were getting wedgie, but it also connected the entire wedgie culture together. We didn't just see wedgies in America, we seen wedgies overseas, we seen wedgies in other countries and other continents, which made most of us realize that while tidy whities were starting to fall out of popularity with the general public over here, in other countries like in South America and Europe, briefs were still trending. But this also reflects just how much power American media has had on the world in general, and definitely when it came to underwear and wedgie politics. There were guys who were gleefully happy to walk up and to get their tidy whities strangled by a group of guys in a group wedgie. And again, I think this all goes back to that culture that's inside of many people's countries and of course in America. The way that underwear reflected class in this decade was similar to that picture I always use, where it goes down based on what underwear that you're wearing, if he's wearing boxers, and if you even have a couple holes in them, oh my God, the rates go up, right? According to UK Mintel, by 2008, 45% of UK men reported choosing to wear boxers and under 45% chose briefs. There was also a time in 2005, according to Cole, where Martha Kenny, BBC radio presenter 4, asked two conservative candidates, David Davis and David Cameron, the iconic question of do you wear briefs or boxers? Davis responded briefs, Cameron responded boxers. Technically, both of the underwear designs signifies conservative values. Briefs at some point were the largest thing that most men wore. Boxers reasserts to men like, hey, I'm the strong-willed guy. And like tidy whities, when boxer briefs became more accessible to more countries, boxer brief eventually became the top choices in many countries like Colombia. We did get to see some cartoon underwear being wedgie from the famous Gench Gotch wedgie contest. I wonder if Gench Gotch was also either a part of the community or had employees that are part of the community, but let me not speak too much. This trend of cartoon underwear will continue on as we go into the 2010s. I'm sure many people who are just into underwear remember this, but remember when Walmart and Target, Kmart used to sell a lot of like either cartoon or just print briefs. And of course we get the iconic company MeUndies that is literally specialized in giving you so many different types of cartoon underwear that changes seasonally. One time they've had Yoda, another time I think they had SpongeBob, they had Spider-Man at one point. And these underwears became integral to the community. Now you're starting to see atomics not just in briefs, but now we're seeing them in more like cartoon underwear. I've seen atomics in Spider-Man briefs. But this resurgent after boxer versus brief war, you did start to see a lot more brands start to come out, and even some that were probably wedgie underwear like Warapa. The fact that they also tried to pull a Gench Gotch and had a wedgie contest, I clocked that. Don't think I didn't clock that. And so as we get to the 2010s, underwear politics started to change even more as more men started to choose their underwear and not wear the ones that either their wives or moms got them, but now they're choosing what they choose to wear. And when I did my research, there were people that were noting I would wedgie anything that have prints on it, which speaks to the fact that now the stigma is starting to change from just tidy whities. Like, don't get me wrong, if you still wear tidy whities, like, you're still gonna be the first on the chopping block to get stretched. That's just how a wedgie totem pole operates. When I started to see more boxer briefs get wedgie, like, I do find it very hilarious and entertaining. It was like when SpongeBob was walking around like he had the suds. Like, it's just funny to me. It's just funny. As far as like when you're looking on like TikTok and other platforms and you see people get wedgie, most of them are usually in boxer briefs. Both underwear technology as well as wedgie manipulation has become an all-time high once we got to the 2010s. We're getting more stretchier underwear like 32 Cool that's allowing you to wear your size and get an atomic. Like, the times have truly changed to the point where no longer is just the art influencing the culture. Now the culture is officially re-influencing the art. This is also reflected within much of our artists that are there using the most deviant style of wedgies. But in the 2010s, what really took off was online shopping. No longer did people have to just go inside of the stores and get weirded out when they're trying to buy a pair of tidy whities and they don't want nobody to know that they're buying them. Now they can buy it in the comfort of their home. And of course, as we know, the more access that people have to underwear, the more access that we have to wedgies. And by this point, what really changed is that a lot of people in the community wasn't just getting wedgie by underwear that they owned, but they were getting wedgie by their specific wedgie underwear. Though some people do not change it, it's also for personal preference and sometimes because of affordability. Now, as fashion starts to become a little bit more lax and people are able to explore themselves and wear what they choose to wear, underwear politics will continue to dominate the conversations both within the wedgie sphere and outside of it. And though we may have had a very stretchy past, gotten a couple more wedgies than we might have wanted to, underwear as a whole, it allowed the community to evolve its efforts to achieve a new wedgie heights from the flagpole wedgie, the tree branch wedgie. In August of 2025, a research study was conducted on 254 participants of the wedgie community at the time of the making of this video. According to the study, gay men and straight men dominated with 35.9%, 32% of the study respectively. When asked on the study what undies do people wear regularly, over 55.5% of respondents cited wearing briefs, with tidy whities trailing at 42.2%. What this all reflects is that men, especially within the community, are starting to recenter themselves back within their own masculinity rather than what the world is telling them. Yes, there are some men that of course subscribe to being nerds and say that hey, they do it because they want to go through the things that come with being a nerd. But what makes this different is that now men are choosing to be the nerds. They are subscribing to it, they are accepting it, and they are taking it with a smile. And this was not just gay men, these are also straight men, and of course bisexuals and other people. Now, some traditions that were still in rotation, that almost 54% of the study felt that tidy whities are still the most wedgieable underwear, as well as what other people chose to wear for wedgies, while boxers scored 47.2% of the respondents on the least to be wedgied. This just really comes down to, again, appearance and tradition. What do people think about tidy whities when they see it? What first comes to their mind? Even with the color, white is usually pushed towards something that's seen as like pure, modest, because nerds are also coined with being incels and virgins, even though obviously that is not true. There have been many different types of nerds who are probably more popular than some of y'all. However, in today's time, it is on our terms. Whether it's in the world or the community, we get to choose if today's our lucky day for our underpants. And I'm not joking, seriously, nobody cares what you wear, as long as they don't got holes in it. All these stigmas made up on underwear is no different than race and any other construct that is not really real. Who cares what society says? A man can wear panties and get in a time by his girlfriend and still be straight. He may get stretched out like this poor soul right here though.
No.
More underwear is getting wedgie literally on every single continent. I'm still waiting on some penguins to get back to me from Antarctica. My last message with this video is that a man nor a woman should not be judged by what underwear that they wear, but the wedgie that they can take. To my tidy whitey brothers and granny penny sisters, hold them high and wear it with pride. Only you can define your manhood, feminine hood, non-binary hood, as long as that hood is made of wedgie. Woo! Woo! You can see me sweating. For time's sake, I kept this video very brief, no pun intended. If you would like me to go deeper on future topics, please definitely drop it down in the comment section. This video was more so focused on the influence of underwear on wedgies, but I'll do one specific for people who just want to watch the one just about underwear. If y'all would like to see a video on the research study, definitely drop it down in the comment section as well. Please do not forget to give me a thumbs up and a subscribe if you enjoyed this video, because it just helps the algorithm push it more and more people can be able to see this type of content. It also lets me know that you like this kind of content, because if I can't see that you don't like the content, I can't make it. Please stay tuned with our social media. We are most active on our Twitter page on @thewedgieclub. If you would like to apply to the Wedgie Club, you have to be at least 19 years or older, of course, but you can apply through the application via our link tree, which is in the link below. If you have any questions or comments, you can definitely DM me within my own personal social media or the Wedgie Club social media. Make sure that you keep your notifications on so that you can be aware when part 3 comes out on the wedgie types, because I know y'all will definitely enjoy that video. Anyways, I hope that you learned something, and more importantly, that you're a little bit more prideful in what you're choosing to wear. I hope that everybody has a great rest of their night. Peace.